Easy Reading Edition 12. A Kingdom That Can't Be Destroyed. Sabbath, March 12. Read for this week's lesson. Hebrews 12 verses 22 to 24. Daniel 7 verses 9, 10, and 13 to 22. Hebrews 12 verses 26 and 27. Psalm 15 verse 5. Hebrews 13 verses 15 and 16. Memory verse. So we should be thankful because we have a kingdom that cannot be shaken, destroyed. And because we are thankful, we should worship God in a way that will please Him. We should do this with respect and fear, wonder. Hebrews 12 verse 28. This week, we will study Hebrews 12 verses 18 to 29. These verses are the most exciting and important part of Hebrews. We will learn many important ideas from Hebrews 12 verses 18 to 29. These verses show us the idea that Paul started his letter with, God communicated to us by His Son. So we need to pay careful attention to Jesus. Hebrews 1 verses 1 and 2, Hebrews 12 verse 25. In Hebrews 12 verses 22 to 24, Paul gives us a review of his most important ideas about Jesus. Number 1, Jesus is the one who brings the new agreement from God to His people. Number 2, the blood of Jesus saves us. Number 3, the angels in heaven celebrate because Jesus is our high priest or top spiritual leader. Jesus is also our King. Finally, Hebrews 12 verses 25 to 29 tells us that the time for God to judge the earth is soon coming. Then God will destroy His enemies, but God will give blessings and a kingdom to His people. Hebrews 12 verses 28 and 29. Paul wants his readers to remember that God gave Jesus a kingdom. Daniel 7 verses 9 to 14. So Paul uses word pictures from Daniel 7 to help his readers understand this idea. Jesus will share His kingdom with His followers. The kingdom will belong to them forever and ever. Daniel 7 verse 18. Sunday, March 13. You have come to the hill named Zion. Hebrews 12 verses 22 to 24. What does Paul tell us in Hebrews 12 verses 22 to 24? Paul says we come to the hill of Zion. Thousands and thousands of angels are there. We come to Zion to celebrate with the angels. But you have come to Mount, the very high hill named Zion. You have come to the city of the living God. This is the heavenly, in heaven, Jerusalem. You have come to a joyful gathering, group of angels. There are thousands and thousands of them. Hebrews 12 verse 22. We come by faith in Jesus, who goes to God for us. At this celebration in heaven, we join God, Jesus, and the angels. There are so many angels, we can't count them all. Jesus is the reason for the celebration. Paul says we have come to the meeting of God's firstborn children. Hebrews 12 verse 23. The first son born in a Jewish family had the most important place in the family and got special blessings. In the eyes of God, all of His children are the same as the first son who is born. We are the firstborn because we share the blessings that God gives us. His firstborn son, Hebrews 1 verse 6. So we do not come to Zion as guests. We come as citizens. Compare with Philippians 3 verse 20. As citizens, our names are written in the books of heaven. Hebrews 32 verse 32, Psalm 56 verse 8, Daniel 12 verse 1, Malachi 3 verse 16, Luke 10 verse 20, Revelation 13 verse 8, Revelation 17 verse 8. Paul also says that we will be perfect and holy. The spirits of all those people who are right with God are there. They have been made perfect. Hebrews 12 verse 23. God is the Father of spirits. Hebrews 12 verse 9. Spirits is a word picture for humans. The reason for the celebration is because God made Jesus our priest or spiritual leader and king. We also celebrate the new agreement that Jesus brings us from God. In Hebrews, Zion, God's city, is the place where all these things happen. The quotes from three psalms or songs in Hebrews 1 verses 5 to 14 show us that Jesus becomes our king on Zion. Read Psalm 2 verses 6 and 7, Psalm 110 verses 1 and 2, Psalm 102 verses 21 to 27. Zion also is the place where God makes Jesus our priest forever. Hebrews 5 verse 6. This quote comes from Psalm 110 verse 4. Finally, Paul shows us that when Jesus becomes our high priest, he starts the new agreement. Hebrews 7 verses 11 to 22. So Hebrews 12 verses 22 to 24 shows us this celebration that happens after Jesus goes back to heaven. Monday, March 14. God, the judge of all people. Hebrews 12 verse 23. Read about the celebration in Hebrews 12 verse 23. If these verses really show us the celebration, why is God the judge there? How can a judge be part of the celebration or a reason for it? Read also Daniel 7 verses 9, 10, 13 to 22 for the answer. As we saw yesterday, Hebrews 12 verses 22 to 24 shows us the celebration. The work God does as judge in the future is part of this celebration. In his work as judge, God examines the books in heaven. Then God makes his final decision. God gives his people the kingdom. Hebrews 12 verse 28. So Hebrews shows us the work God does as judge before the second coming. Daniel also saw this work. In a dream, Daniel saw the court in heaven. Daniel 7. Then the one who has lived forever took his seat as judge. Daniel 7 verse 9. God sits on a throne made from fire. Thousands of angels served God. Daniel 7 verse 10. Books are opened. Daniel 7 verse 10. Then God decides in favor of his holy people, and they receive God the kingdom. Daniel 7 verse 22. In Hebrews 12 verses 22 to 29, we see God the judge of all people. Hebrews 12 verse 23. He is on the high hill named Zion. Another name for this place in heaven is New Jerusalem. Around God are thousands and thousands of angels. Hebrews 12 verse 22. God uses books in his work as judge. The names of his people are written in these books. Hebrews 12 verse 23. This information shows us that God will decide in favor of his people. Jesus has an important part in this work in the court in heaven. Hebrews 12 verse 24. He is the one who brings the people of God to Zion. The new agreement allows Jesus to bring his people, Hebrews 12 verses 22 to 24, to heaven. There, God will give his people the gift he promised them. God will give his people the kingdom. Hebrews 12 verse 27. So Hebrews 12 verse 23 shows us that the work that God does as our judge really is good news. God will decide in favor of his people. God will show that his people are innocent of every wrong thing that Satan accuses them of doing. This decision will show that Satan loses and God wins. Satan, the dragon, is the evil power that controls the awful kingdoms in Daniel 7. These animals are word pictures for kingdoms that hurt the people of God in the past. Revelation 13 shows us how Satan again will use the leaders on this earth to hurt the people of God in the end times. Tuesday, March 15, the day God shakes the earth and sky. Hebrews 12 verses 26 and 27. Paul warns his readers to pay attention to what God says. They need to be careful to obey God because he is about to do something big. God warns only once, one time. More, I will shake the earth and the sky also. Hebrews 12 verse 26. Paul warns us to obey because God has not finished giving us the things that he promised us. Yes, Jesus is our high priest or top spiritual leader and king in heaven, but we can choose to turn away from him and be lost, so we need to obey him. We also need to pay attention because something important is about to happen. Compare Haggai 2 verses 6 to 9, 20 to 22, Psalm 96 verses 9 and 10, Psalm 99 verse 1, and Hebrews 12 verses 26 and 27. Why does God shake the earth and sky? What does this word picture show us? In the Old Testament, the shaking of the earth was a word picture for God who is coming. God shows up to save his people. When Deborah and Barak fight against Sisera, God fights from heaven for them. Judges 5 verse 20. The power of God is shown by a mighty earthquake. This earthquake shakes the earth and the mountains when God comes to help his people. Judges 5 verses 4 and 5. We see this same word picture many times in the Old Testament when God shows up to free his people from their enemies. Psalm 68 verses 7 and 8, Psalm 60 verse 2, Psalm 77 verses 17 and 18. So a shaking shows us that the time comes for God to judge and show his control over the people on the earth. The prophets, or holy messengers, also show that God will shake the earth when he comes to punish evil people. Isaiah 13 verse 13, Isaiah 24 verses 18 to 23. In Hebrews, the shaking of earth and sky also show the time when God will destroy his enemies. God made this promise to Jesus when Jesus sat on his throne. God said to Jesus, "Sit at my right side until I put your enemies under your power." Control. Hebrews 1 verse 13. Yes, Jesus beat Satan, the enemy. Hebrews 2 verses 14 to 16. When he sat on his throne. Hebrews 1 verses 5 to 14. But the devil and the ones who hate Jesus must be destroyed in the future. Hebrews 10 verses 11 to 14. 1 Corinthians 15 verses 23 to 25. God will destroy these enemies forever when he shakes the earth and sky. So the shaking shows us that God will destroy the humans on this earth who hurt the people of God. God also will destroy the ones who control these leaders, Satan and his angels. Wednesday, March 16. A kingdom that can't be destroyed. Psalm 15 verse 5. As we saw, God announces that he will shake the earth and sky. This word picture shows us that God will destroy his enemies, but some things will not be destroyed. Compare Psalm 15 verse 5, Psalm 16 verse 8, Psalm 21 verse 7, Psalm 62 verse 2, Psalm 102 verse 6, and Hebrews 12 verse 27. What things will stand strong and not be destroyed? Today, Hebrews 12 verse 27 confuses many readers of modern Bibles. These modern Bibles say that God will shake the earth and the sky. So many people think that the earth and sky will be gone forever. But the Bible shows us that God will make new skies and a new earth. Isaiah 65 verse 17, Revelation 21 verses 1 to 4. So the shaking really shows us that God will make the earth clean and new again. God will not completely remove or destroy the earth. What else will not be shaken or destroyed? The people of God will not be destroyed. 1 Thessalonians 4 verses 13 to 17. Philippians 3 verse 20. The people of God will not be destroyed because they trust in God. The God who made them keeps them alive when they see him at the second coming. Do you see how in Hebrews the things that stand forever are connected with Jesus? Paul shows us this connection when he says, Lord, you made the world in the beginning. The sky was made by your hands. These things will come to an end, but you will live on. They will all wear out like the same as clothes. You will fold up the world and the sky as if they were a blanket. They will not stay as they are now, but you will also be as you are now. The years of your life will never end. Hebrews 1 verses 1 to 10, 10 to 12. Hebrews also says, Jesus lives forever. He will never stop serving as a priest, spiritual leader. Hebrews 7 verses 3 and 24. The ones that Jesus saves have better things in heaven that will always continue forever too. Hebrews 10 verse 34. When God does his work as judge, his people will not be shaken or destroyed. Psalm 46 verse 5. They will live forever because Jesus lives in them. Paul also says we have a kingdom that cannot be shaken. Hebrews 12 verse 28. Daniel talks about this kingdom. Daniel 7 verse 18. This kingdom will continue forever. Daniel 2 verse 44. This kingdom belongs to the Son, but Jesus, the Son, will share his kingdom with us. Thursday, March 17. Let us give thanks all the time to God. Hebrews 13 verses 15 and 16. How should we thank God for all his wonderful gifts? The answer is we should worship God in a way that pleases him. Compare Hebrews 12 verse 28 and Hebrews 13 verses 15 and 16. How do we worship God in a way that pleases him? The Israelites offered animal gifts to God to show him they were thankful or sorry. These animals were only word pictures. They show the feelings in the hearts of the givers. God did not really like animal offerings. God wanted his people to be kind, holy, and to give him thanks. God was pleased by these gifts. These gifts showed worship. In the same way, Paul invites us to worship God by offering Him praise and thanks. When we are sorry for sin and are kind to other people, God is happy. God loves these gifts. Sure, we can't offer our gifts to God in person, but God in heaven accepts our gifts. That is why Paul encourages us through his whole letter to think about Jesus. Hebrews 3 verse 1, Hebrews 4 verse 14, Hebrews 10 verse 23. Then we will continue to do good things for other people. Hebrews 6 verses 10 to 12. Hebrews 13 verses 1, 2, and 16. Now we understand more fully what Paul means when he invites his readers to worship God in a way that will please him. Hebrews 12 verse 28. The invitation also shows Christians that they are now a holy group of priests or spiritual leaders. God chose Israel in the past to be a kingdom of priests. God wanted Israel to announce the good news that Jesus saves people from sin. Exodus 19 verses 4 to 6, 1 Peter 2 verse 9 and 10, Revelation 1 verse 6, Revelation 5 verse 10. But Israel did not obey God. Then Jesus came. Jesus did the things God wanted him to do. Hebrews 10 verse 10. Because of that, we are made holy by the offering Jesus made for us. Hebrews 10 verse 10. Read Hebrews 10 verses 11 to 14, 19 to 23. God now gives us the plan He gave Israel. As part of this plan, God asks us to share what we have and to do good. Hebrews 13 verses 1 to 6 also shows us the good we should do. We must love people as if they were only family. Jesus showed this love to us. Hebrews 2 verses 11 and 12. You must be kind and helpful. You must visit prisoners and the suffering. Hebrews 13 verse 3. We must turn from sex sins. We must not be greedy. Praise is an important part of worship. Why are good works and sharing an important part of our worship too? Friday, March 18. Additional thought. After the second coming, God's people will live in heaven for 1,000 years. During this time, God and His people will judge the evil dead who continue to sleep in their graves. Paul tells us about this time. Do not be quick to say who is right or wrong. Wait until the Lord comes. He will bring into the light the things that are hidden in men's hearts. He will show why men have done these things. Every man will get from God the thanks reward he should have. 1 Corinthians 4 verse 5. Daniel also talks about this time. Judgment, the work of judging, was given to the saints, holy people of the Most High God. Daniel 7 verse 22. At this time, the holy people of God will serve God as kings and priests, spiritual leaders. John says, Then I saw some thrones and people sitting on them. These people were the ones who had been given the power to judge. Revelation 20 verse 4. They will be priests for God and for Christ. They will rule with Him for 1,000 years. Revelation 20 verse 6. At this time, Paul shows us God's people will judge the world, the evil dead people. 1 Corinthians 6 verse 2. Together with Jesus, God's people will judge all the evil people who ever lived. The people of God will compare things the evil ones did with the Bible. Then the people of God will make a final decision. Jesus and his people also judged Satan and his evil angels. Paul says, "Do you not know that we shall judge angels?" 1 Corinthians 6 verse 3. Jude announces, "Remember the angels also. Some of them did not keep the high, important place work they had, but they left their home. God has them tied in chains forever, and He is keeping them in a very dark place. He will keep them there until the big day when they will be judged." Jude 1 verse 6. Ellen G. White, The Great Controversy, pages 660, 661. Discussion questions. Number 1. The people of God will judge the evil dead. 1 Corinthians 6 verse 3. Jude 1 verse 6. What does this Bible truth tell us about God and how honest He is with us? How will this work show us that God is fair and kind to the ones who refused His mercy? Number 2. Read Exodus 32 verse 32, Psalm 56 verse 8, Psalm 69 verse 28, Psalm 139 verse 16, Psalm 4 verse 3, Daniel 12 verse 1, Malachi 3 verse 16, Luke 10 verse 20, Revelation 13 verse 8, and Revelation 17 verse 8. These verses talk about the books of God in heaven. What is written in these books? Why is it important that God keeps a record of our tears? Psalm 56 verse 8. God knows everything, right? So why does He need to keep books or records?